Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. We're doing a marathon filming session today. And so we're going to talk today about the subject of places you want to avoid for offshore banking. Before we get started, destroy the subscribe button, get logged in, or not logged in, connected with us, click the bell. We've got lots of great videos for you. If you have some video content you'd like to see, please tell us and let's dive into the subject. Okay. So we're going to talk today about the subject of, as I said, places you don't want to bank in. Where this came up from was I saw some other provider. Well, I guess there's two things. One is I've had various people who have reached out to me with just horrible banking ideas. And then I saw another international provider send out some information with some recommendations. And I was like, this is just total trash, like complete and utter trash. I would never, I just wouldn't want to bank there at all. And I certainly wouldn't want any volume of money there. And they were suggesting this and I was just like, are you nuts? Like, this is totally irresponsible. So we're going to go through places that you definitely don't want to deal with. So let's start with pretty much everywhere in the Caribbean, but we'll go through one by one. So do you want to bank in Nevis? No, you do not want to bank in Nevis. Bank of Nevis, you do not want to go to. Just forget about it, okay? It's off the map. Number two, very popular place, Belize. Do you want to bank in Belize? No, Belize is trash, okay? Like, if you absolutely have to, which I cannot believe that you would be in a situation that you would have to bank in Belize, it is possible to bank in Belize. Fees are high, service is crap. Yes, you can open bank accounts relatively easily, but there's a good chance you could lose your correspondent accounts there, and you're in a situation where you very likely could end up with just your money stuck there. Okay, so the problem in a lot of these cases is that they don't have their own correspondent banking relationships. So you have multiple levels of due diligence, and they're very highly scrutinized. So as a result, the likelihood that you're going to get your money stuck there, especially if you're doing large transfers, is very high. We had a situation where we were transferring quite a large amount of money for a client, and it was like months that the money was stuck in, not in one of those locations, but somewhere else. And it's just a good lesson not to deal with those places. It was quite a few years ago, and things are worse today. So those are other ones. Dominica, do you want to bank in Dominica? No, Dominica is trash. Do not do that. St. Vincent, do you want to bank there? No, trash. Don't want to deal with that either. For the most part, these places don't really have much in the way of banking these days. And it is worth noting that usually, because people will look and they'll say, oh, hey, well, there's Scotiabank here, there's CIBC, there's whatever, these are good Canadian banks. I know these. The reality is that those are often only available for locals. So for instance, if we look at Belize, there's two sets of banking licenses. The one set of banking licenses for international and the one is for domestic. And so for instance, Scotiabank is only for domestic, right? So yeah, great, you have Scotiabank. That being said, you don't have nearly the degree of service and technology, et cetera, in these countries at Scotiabank as you do in, say, Canada. Okay, so for instance, the online app may have improved somewhat today, but they're just way ahead in Canada. It's not, it's the same brand name. Okay, great, they're a big successful bank, etc. You probably have less to be concerned because of the brand name about actually losing money, but the degree of service and quality and things like that is not at the same level. That being said, there have been some rare occasions where CIBC in the Caribbean, First Caribbean International Bank is what it went under the name of, CIBC First Caribbean, was pretty good. I would say it's highly difficult to bank there today, and so usually off the map. Some people will come to me and talk about banking in British Virgin Islands. I don't honestly know where you would bank in British Virgin Islands. Basically, forget it. What about Bahamas? Bahamas is a little bit trickier because there are some very specific use cases where you may want to bank in Bahamas, and it may be possible for you to bank in Bahamas. For the most part, it's very hard to bank in Bahamas, and so it's usually just not an option. Okay, so, but there are some specific cases. For instance, if you're in crypto and you're banking at Deltec Bank, there's a few other examples. Usually you need high balances. We're talking $500,000, $1 million plus, depending on the situation, to bank there. And so that can, I wouldn't say that it's a great situation. Pretty much what you're going to find throughout the Caribbean is, if you consider bankers' hours, quote unquote, as a bad thing, It's far, far worse in the Caribbean. You're in an environment where there's a lot of hurricanes, etc. So the likelihood that you have no contact during a certain time of the year is high. Basically, just stay away from it, okay? What about Cayman Islands? I have a lot of people who talk to me about Cayman Islands, and Cayman Islands has a reputation for this. Here's the thing that you need to know about Cayman Islands. Cayman Islands, if you're not based in Cayman Islands, is not so easy to deal with anymore. It used to be very popular, right? There was a lot of people who do quite a bit of banking there. That probably ended maybe around 2015. So it's been about 5 years now since we don't do much banking. There's, again, a few exceptions, but usually very specific ones. Usually you need some sort of local presence in Cayman Islands. So and it's very expensive to have local presence in Cayman Islands. So really, why would you want to? It's very popular for the hedge fund industry because of some particular rules that they have there. But generally speaking, if you have a foreign company, you're not going to bank in Cayman Islands. So generally forget that. What about Montenegro? Okay, Montenegro is trash. Okay, just trash place to bank. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Montenegro, beautiful country, all this thing. But for banking, their banking is very Mickey Mouse. Doing basic things like, I would say transactions. If you have to do transactions over $10,000, forget about it. That's basically probably the rule of thumb. If you're going to keep over 50,000 euros there, and if you're going to do transactions over 10,000 euros, then don't use Montenegro. That's pretty much what I would say. Okay, so it's just not a sophisticated banking jurisdiction. So you're going to run into problems. It's also considered very high risk, so therefore you're going to have a lot of issues with that. What about looking at? Some people want to look at some place like Malta. Okay. Malta, good luck. That's all I can say. Good luck. Very, very hard to bank in Malta, and generally speaking, not a very good reputation. Okay, so if you can get banking in Malta, it's possible, but usually it's going to be slow and difficult. If you can get banking there, you're generally going to find that, I mean, they've had a number of banks who have shut down, so this is not a great starting point, right? And from there, in addition to getting banks shut down, you're probably in a situation where you could have a risk of further issues. So there are some exceptions. Usually those are pretty expensive. The one bank that has been consistently okay has been Bank of Valletta, BOV, but it's been very difficult to get accounts at Bank of Valletta. Usually you need some local connections. Usually it's only for a Maltese company. Okay, so usually probably that one's off the board. What are some other places that you might look? Well, okay, so I went through kind of the Caribbean, mostly throw the Caribbean out. Let's talk about Panama. Panama is an interesting one because it was traditionally very, very hard to open bank accounts there. Like just the amount of paperwork and hassles, etc., were quite crazy. Now, the one exception for Panama is if you're, say, doing the Friendly Nations visa program and you're getting set up there, then usually it's fairly straightforward. Now, here's the reality of Panama in the global environment today, is that Panama has a very bad reputation due to the Panama Papers. Now, what people will tell me, and what I fully get and is totally true, is that, hey, listen, Mossack Fonseca was a great law firm, actually. They were, I think, the number 3 in the world for offshore company formations, so there was tons of that. The majority of the companies that they formed were perfectly legitimate companies. There's lots of good reasons to have an offshore company. But the stigma of Panama and the Panama Papers has meant that there is much more attention on stuff coming from there, which is ridiculous because of the fact that it had very little to do with banking anyway. Okay, the company Mossack Fonseca was based in Panama, but the reality is that, you would use them, say, for Anguilla, you would use them for British Virgin Islands, you would use them for a lot of these different countries. Often they were just forming companies. They weren't doing anything with the banking, and the banking wasn't in Panama. So, why the stigma on Panama? It's just a PR thing, okay? But to give you some idea of an example of how this is, I have a close friend, client, who visited Panama, wanted to move there, wonderful, really liked it, got set up there. And when he talked to his accountant in Estonia, they told him, sorry, we can't work with you if you're shifting your residency to Panama. And he found none of the accountants in Estonia were willing to work with him on that basis. So this gives you some idea of the stigma that exists today. So I would say it's very unlikely that you're going to run any sizable amount of bank, certainly not for foreign companies. For a Panamanian company, okay, maybe. But generally speaking, it's not really an optimal place. Okay, let's go to the other side of the world, Vanuatu. Because when I'm working with the Vanuatu citizenship providers, they sometimes tell me, oh, you know, a Vanuatu bank account. Why would you ever want a Vanuatu bank account? Just forget about it. Just no more. Don't pay attention to that at all. You don't want anything to do with banking in Vanuatu. So get rid of that. What about Serbia? I sometimes hear people, they like the idea that Serbia is not a part of automatic exchange of information, and so therefore, you know, hey, great, we can go to Serbia. No, do not do it. Serbia is a disastrous place to bank. Horrible. Do not do it. It's off the map. Okay, so gone. What about Macedonia? Macedonia is a little bit easier to work with, say, than Serbia, but generally not a good place to go. You're usually, again, you know, people sometimes like that. There are like a few hyper rare situations where maybe I would tell someone, okay, in your extreme situation, go to Macedonia and, you know, do the banking there. But generally speaking, stay clear of Macedonian banking. Any other places that you might think, well, sometimes we have Gibraltar comes up. Gibraltar is very hard to bank in. So if you can get set up there, you know, kudos to you, but very, very difficult to do that. So I would say generally no to that. Anything else that we would like to go with? I mean, so let's talk about kind of one last one. And this one is not an intrinsically bad one. This one is, it's kind of good, but you have to be really aware of what you're getting yourself into, and that's Estonia. Okay, so Estonia has really pushed their e-residency citizen program, and actually there's one more I'm going to add after this that we'll talk about. They've really pushed this e-residency thing, and it's really easy to form a company there. They've increasingly made their kind of tax system for foreigners, freelancers, effective. What usually ends up happening is they say, oh, use TransferWise. TransferWise, perfectly good thing. I'm quite happy with TransferWise. They're quite decent if you're really small, right? So for personal, low volume transfers, etc., personally, it's fine. But if you're trying to do anything big, not so good. This leads you to looking at the banks in Estonia. Now, Swedbank used to be an option. SEB used to be an option. Both Swedish banks, both good quality banks. Difficult to deal with, and basically now you can't deal with them. So the answer is pretty much you just can't deal with them. So they're out. This leaves you with LHV Bank. LHV Bank you can deal with, okay? But you can only deal in euros, and it's gotten a little bit more complicated. So generally I would say if you're willing to only deal in euros, then that might be an option for you. You know, you may look at it. Tallinn is a nice place to visit. You know, it's kind of charming. It gets cold. Actually, it's never really hot. So I was there at the start of August last year, and you need a sweater. So the last one that we'll cover off is Cyprus, because Cyprus was very popular historically. Cyprus has gotten much more difficult. It's very restricted that you can open an account for a foreign company in Cyprus, and it's even hard to open oftentimes accounts for Cyprus companies in Cyprus. The exception being, you know, if you're a Cypriot, you're living in Cyprus, you have some Cyprus residency, then it's a little bit easier. I've almost always advised people to steer clear of Cyprus, and the reason is just you saw how unstable and scary their banking system was back in 2013 with the whole Euro crisis and all this. So it's not a place that I really would tend to advise. That being said, their banks were not bad. There is not like, I'm talking about in terms of service and facilities, etc. Like you had some workability. So although I don't love them, there are some options. The thing that's worth noting is there's a fraud going on. Pretty sure it's a fraud. Certainly fraudulent enough that you don't want to go anywhere near it, which is the idea of banks licensed in the Turkish side of Cyprus. There's one in particular that contacts me fairly frequently, and as far as I can tell, they're just outright fraud. So yeah, don't steer clear of that. Okay. So anyway, I hope that helps you. These are things to like stay away from. There's plenty of, although banking is harder, much harder in the world today, there are plenty of decent places to go. I would far prefer you to take a high quality EMI, of which there are some, as opposed to one of these garbage jurisdictions that is likely to run you into all kinds of problems. Okay, so anyway, I'm not going to say there are no circumstances where one of these is not an option. There may be like the odd edge case that, okay, that's where, you know, I would say you have to go. But generally speaking, just stay away from all that crap. It's no good. I hope that helps. Please click the subscribe button, click the notification bell, like the video if you liked it. If you've got questions, write them in the comments below. If you want to book a call, you can click the link below, clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer. You can check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com. We can help you with, you know, citizenships, residencies, payment processing, forming companies, tax planning, reducing your taxes, asset protection, etc. So anyway, reach out to us, and I'm going to see you guys on the next video.